Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Serving Nerve episode 10. Yes, we're hitting double digits today. Outstanding, right? I can't believe I've been uploading daily on this channel. I didn't think I would actually exceed my expectations in that regard because I thought I'd fall off after the second week. In fact, I thought I wouldn't even be able to get in a second episode of this. But, oh well. Anyways, today we're going to be talking about if the server is really bad, how much should you tip? Or should you tip? Now, this kind of depends on a series of variables. How busy the restaurant is, if the server is actually bad on purpose and just doesn't try, and what I mean on purpose, deliberately doesn't try, or if it's just a really hectic night and they get bamboozled and it just happens to be that the service is really bad, but they are trying and you see them racing around all over the restaurant and you see them trying to do their best, but maybe they're slammed, maybe they're in the weeds, maybe they're screwed, bamboozled, and maybe they're just having a really bad day. All right. So, in the first instance, one, if the restaurant is dead, no excuses, no cabooses. Honestly, if there is a server operating a dead restaurant, they should never have an instance of time where they're not trying. There are times where if you have such a really, dead restaurant for some reason, and this happens to us as well, as, even I refer to myself as a good server. I think I'm pretty good at serving, and I know a lot of other people who are really good servers. But for some reason, when it's not that busy, your service kind of falters. It's like you're not aware of people actually coming into the restaurant, dining, and expecting a certain experience, and instead you're kind of just like, oh, I'm supposed to be serving people. Oh my god. And for some reason, there's a point where if it's just not busy enough, you might just be kind of out of the loop. Maybe you'll show up too often at a table. Maybe you'll not show up often enough because you're trying to give them time. You're not trying to overwhelm them. Maybe you'll it's just weird. But if you don't have a flow with a full section, or at least enough tables kind of getting sat to keep you distracted, you might be just not there. Not there enough or there too much. Now, again, if the restaurant is busy, I always give the grace to my server because maybe they're just in the weeds. So if they don't traverse the area enough, if they don't come to the table enough, and I do pardon that there's rain and stuff, so sorry about the noise, but if they just, if you can see them running around, and there's a section they're going to operate, so you're going to see them around the section, but if they're just going back and forth and have so much going on, you can kind of tell, the busyness of the restaurant. Maybe they're overwhelmed by something. In our restaurant, sometimes we have a hard time finding plates and silverware. So if things come delayed, sometimes it's due to something that's not in conjunction with their efforts. Maybe there's something that's going against them. I usually do give the grace in most circumstances and still tip 20%, even when the service is suboptimal, as long as my server tries. But what if the server's not trying? What if they deliberately ignore your table because they deem it a low priority table, you're not buying the big heavy hitting items, etc. Even when I don't buy the heavy items, I usually will just tip more. It gives me more opportunity to tip. If I go to a dive bar, I'm still gonna tip. I'll probably tip over 20% because it's just a cheap bill and I can throw extra money to fill it in, It's the same thing with a really cheap dining establishment. If I go to a place that's really high end, I'm gonna at least tip 20% anyways, especially if the server's doing a lot at my table, especially if they're gonna do anything like bottle service or something like that. I'm so sorry. Jeez, it is just coming down right now, and I'm sure you can hear it because my microphone is suboptimal. Yes, I have another drink. What's funny is I'm pre-gaming for a date. I realized the tequila I bought, I'm not a very big fan of. It's got a vanilla vibe to it. It's a reposado, but it tastes kind of vanilla-y. And I just mixed soda water and Deep Eddy, not lemon, Deep Eddy grapefruit for a little extra vibe. I might need to just add more acid to this, and that's probably what I'm going to do. But anyways, just what I'm trying to say is if the service is really bad and your server is just kind of ignoring you because they don't think you're going to tip that much, they don't think that you're going to take care of them, you can always fulfill their expectations by not tipping a lot, or tipping the 20%. I think that for my personal experiences, it takes a lot for me to not want to tip, and the most I've never not tipped is only $0 one time because our server literally disappeared. I've talked about that before, but we had a server one time. I went to a sushi place, group order. I don't know if you've seen the episode where I talk about this, so I'll just give the rundown. Sushi place, group order. It's kind of like a higher end sushi place, where group orders, cocktails, and all that are flowing. And our server literally, half the food didn't come on time. And, you can say that's a kitchen error, but also some things were just never brought out, and that's because the server didn't ring it in. A lot of the time, when things are not brought out, the kitchen can be to blame, but a lot of the time it's also the server just did not ring it in, and they forgot. And our server, basically didn't ring in some of our drinks, didn't ring in some of our food, everything was stagnated and weird, and then we had to like ask like, where is this item that we're paying for, because we assume we're paying for it because we ordered it. And if it doesn't come out, then it's like, well, I don't want to pay for something I didn't receive. And that's the worst thing, is the disappointment of an order not even being fulfilled by a server. Outside of that, the other variable that comes with that is when the server disappears for a really long time, does not hit that table. And with group tables, you should expect a server's going to be there more because it's a big table. They've got a lot to deal with. They might have a smaller section as a result. They might just have other things going on, maybe whatever the case is. But either way, if it's a group order, like you got a table of 8 people, it's going to be rare when they're not actually being serviced at all. Even at dive bars, I've been serviced really well as a group. But anyways, this place, she just disappears. She disappears for like 40 minutes to an hour. Like, I'm serious. We had to go to the host stand to actually, like, figure out where she was. That's how bad it was. And then I didn't tip on it. Other people were tipping. I wasn't going to tip. There's nobody to tip at that point. Where's the server? And I've said that a lot. If there's a place that you go to and there's nobody serving you, what's the point of tipping? Like, even a bartender, I'm willing to tip because you see them making a drink. You see them operating what they're operating. You see what they're doing, and they provide you a service. You should tip on that. And usually, I will tip more than 20% because most places I go to that are bars, it's not really an expensive place, but an expensive place you should tip. But in general, the point I'm trying to make is if the service is really bad, you don't have to tip anything if you don't want to. I just would like to pay attention to those kinds of things. Like, I usually look at it on a one-by-one basis. Even if the service is bad, why is the service actually bad? Is it because the server isn't trying, or is it because they're weeded? And if they're weeded, maybe they've got like a ton going on. They got to time everything. If things come out with delays, it is what it is, New menu rollouts cause delays in the kitchen, which can also impair server flow. Things that are missing in the restaurant, which is a commonality in most restaurants, impairs server flow. Maybe your server's trying to find extra plates, cutlery, silverware, steak knives, things to actually make it so that your table can have an appropriate experience. And sometimes that takes a few extra minutes, Sometimes that may take a few extra more than minutes. Like, these things actually do happen very commonly in restaurants, but after a certain point, you should be tipping and or not tipping based on the service. Now, I'm less brutal. I'm pretty forgiving when it comes to those kinds of things because I've been a server before and I've been weeded. I've been screwed over. I've found that, there are times where I just cannot get the things going. There's no plates, there's no silverware, there's no nothing. Or maybe I'm slammed. I've got like 5-7 tables, whatever the case is. And I just cannot hit that table fast enough to make them feel like the service is optimal. And that's my personal opinion. I've had a lot of people say the service was great, but that's just because a lot of restaurant service is really bad. It's not like I'm doing a great job. It's like there are times where the person's just had worse experiences than with me, And I'm pretty brutal and critical of myself when it comes to things like that. I think I'm just okay. I've gotten a lot of compliments, people saying that I'm great, etc. But I don't really look at it any other way because you don't really know what they're thinking, and you don't know the service they've experienced prior, and you should always endeavor to give optimal service as a server. And this is the problem, is a lot of servers really don't try, and a lot of the ones who do try, they get under-tipped anyways. So I would recommend really looking at it, like, what is the server doing for you? In spite of any delays, what is the server doing for you? And, are they giving you at least a smile? Are they really trying with you? Are they trying to be kind of jovial, extroverted in any capacity? Maybe they're a little bit more reserved of a server, sure. But if they do anything like bottle service, like they open a bottle of wine at your table, if they're trying to serve those foods, if they get the order right, and the order, even if it comes out delayed, if the order is right, you should try and pay attention to those variables. And pardon my stuttering, but in general, like, when it comes to serving, you should always endeavor to tip your server unless they're genuinely not doing anything for you. And I'm really saying, like, anything for you, and they just disappear. Like, there are other times where I've had friends who go to an actual restaurant, and the server is blitzed out of their mind, and they ask for a new server, and they definitely don't tip the server that, is too busy being intoxicated to take an order. And this happens a lot. But in general, like, the point I'm trying to make is when it comes to being a server, it's hard. Like, not even just on a basis of stress, but sometimes the flow is just all over the place. Maybe the bar is delayed. Maybe they've got a bunch of drink orders because your server's bringing in drinks, and they might run drinks to you, but they don't get to choose when the drinks are made. They don't get to choose how the drinks are made. They don't get to choose who makes the drinks. They don't get to choose any of that. So, if you're ordering drinks, even bottles of wine and stuff, a lot of the time servers have to wait at a bar to get the bottle of wine. There are a lot of variables that go into things like that. the kitchen, the server cannot control. They can run food all day, but there's a certain point where the kitchen might just not have enough orders going on, or might have too many orders going on to get the food to hit your table at a timely manner. And you know what? That's why, like, when it comes to a restaurant, when I go to a restaurant, I don't have anything planned at least 2 hours after I expect to leave that restaurant. You know, I do not want to have my server rushing around. I don't want to be feeling like I'm pressured to leave at any point in time when I'm, expecting to be serviced. And there's a difference between, like, closing. You know, if this place is closing, you should feel a bit of pressure to leave because they're trying to wrap things up. But that's a little different. In general, I always endeavor to tip my servers. And, I usually will tip more than 20% in most instances, as long as the server tries, is jovial, is trying to be a good server. They don't even have to be a good server. They just have to try to be a good server. And I'll take care of them. Even if they think, like, oh, this person's not going to ball out, get the expensive steaks, get the expensive drinks, get the expensive this, that, and the other. I still am pretty good at racking a bill, I guess. But even if not, I usually just fill the bill out. So if I spend $50, maybe I'll put $30 on there because I can. Maybe I'll do $25. I'm not gonna do $10 unless the service is mid. But if the person is actually trying, I'll give them more than that, and I'll at least try to cover their tip out. Because even if they're a really bad server, I don't want to be entirely penalizing them and costing them money by just happening to be a table in their section when they're weeded. So, and tip out ranges. It can be say your bill is $100. It could be $3, could be $10. You don't know because you don't work at the place, and every place is different. Restaurant-wise, every single place is different for tip out and what they have to pay towards other, people in the restaurant. And I explained that in a different video, so by all means, look at some of my other videos that talk about serving, and you'll kind of understand the math behind what I'm talking about. But in general, it's always good to endeavor to tip your server 20%. It covers their tip out. It pays them some wage, it covers their taxes, and it makes them engage. And if you assure that tip for them, maybe they'll be more likely, if you place yourself regularly at a certain restaurant, they'll take better care of you over time. And, again, it's just luck of the draw sometimes. Sometimes your server's just gonna suck. That's why certain places will let you request servers. A lot of places I've worked, you can always request a server. And I always tell my tables, hey, you like my service? You can always request me. We always tell our names. They can always request that name. That's how it works. And again, in general, you don't have to feel pressured, in my opinion, to tip your server. But personally, I do feel like every server should get tipped. Unless they're, again, one of the worst servers ever. Like that only instance where I didn't tip. And, I've dined out fair enough, at a fair enough amount of places. And I've been to places enough. And I've dined at enough places to have a pretty good track record to be tipping and only have one place where I wouldn't tip. And again, it was only one instance at one place. So I really do encourage you to just try and give some grace until no longer grace can be given when it comes to servers, because every server is different, every restaurant's different, every situation is different, and things just happen. And, even if you don't want to tip, the worst thing I've had is when people will tip or not tip, but they complain. They complain to the manager. They complain to this. And unless there's something actually wrong, like the server brings you something with an allergy you actually have an allergy to, or something is, horribly wrong, or the server's really, not, okay, like they're acting intoxicated or something. I've never had an instance of time where I try and bring in management, because, again, you don't know what's actually happening. But sometimes that happens. That's the worst instance, though, is when management is brought in. It's not even when you don't get tipped. It's when you get threatened. You get your job threatened, your livelihood threatened. And the thing is, I go into work 100% sober. I don't like drinking on the job. I've met other people who drink on the job. I'm not a fan of that. I like doing my thing. Then I get screwed up when I get home. It doesn't matter when when you're off, you can go off. But personally, I don't believe in the idea of being intoxicated at work. I think it's a terrible idea. I know a lot of people do it because it's a high-stress job, but at the end of the day, you shouldn't do it. And on top of that, usually I would just say I would want a different server if something like that were happening. I wouldn't even I definitely wouldn't file a review or an actual complaint against the server. Because again, unless they're a genuinely horrible server and they're being a creep and a weirdo and they're not doing their job and they're actually they're acting really inappropriately, there's no reason, in my opinion, why I should be so harsh. But I'm a pretty forgiving person in that regard, I guess. Or maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm just being normal. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt until a certain point. And I do enjoy tipping people because I think that it encourages good service. But again, it depends. So, I don't know. I just wanted to rant about that because I feel like a lot of individuals really have a 0 or 100% kind of like perspective on tipping, where they won't tip at all unless it's amazing, and then they'll tip like 10% or something, or they will over tip even if the service is terrible and absolutely atrocious. Even when they shouldn't tip, they tip, and they tip over 20% for no reason. Like, there are times where I feel like I've not tried hard enough with a table and they still tip me 20% or more. And then there are other times where I try really hard with the table and they don't tip me jack. And it's just random. And I feel like there should be a threshold where if you actually are trying, you should be paid. You should be paid in accordance with your endeavors as a server, because it encourages you to work harder and do more. Do more side work, uphold the standards of the restaurant, actually, like, be good to your tables. But at the same time, there's also this threshold where that is discouraged because certain places just don't get tipped anyways. Certain people just don't tip anyways. Certain places don't get the tips anyways, no matter how hard you try, so why try? Like, there's those kinds of outcomes as well. So it's just so hit and miss. But I really have to preface, I really encourage you to at least endeavor to tip your server unless something is horribly awry. Like, horribly awry. And they're a really, truly terrible server in every capacity. And even then, I'd probably still throw them a few bucks unless they're genuinely an atrocious server. Now, again, also it depends, like, where are you? Are you at a restaurant dining in, or are you, like, ordering DoorDash or takeout or something? Or are you just randomly, like, at a bar, like a dive bar on a Friday night and it's busy as all God? Like, there is a point of differentiation with all of these circumstances and how busy a restaurant is and how slow a restaurant is, how much staff are on in the restaurant. Like, you can tell when a place is understaffed pretty easily. You can also tell when a place is dead or busy. So, again, I'm trying to just, I'm trying to give a little perspective here, kind of level the playing field. It's not always black and white. It's usually pretty gray. So, that was the video. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, my friends. Yeah, tell me what you think. Do you tip 20% no matter what? Do you not tip even when the service is great? Like, do you like tipping when the server is really nice? Do you not care and tip no matter what anyways? Do you tip 20% no matter what? Like, what is your personal opinion about this? I would love to know. So anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Later.